Now, lots to digest in there. Let's get back over to our panel. And the leader of the Royal College of Nurses, Pat Cullen, is here this morning and I'm sure was listening intently. Steve Powis, one of the most senior NHS managers in the country, he's just told us that industrial action puts the recovery from COVID at risk. How do you answer that?
Well, I listened carefully to what Stephen had to say, and what he didn't say was that the 1 day of action that nurses are going to take on Thursday hasn't created the 7.2 million people sitting on our waiting lists. The NHS has been in crisis for many, many years. That hasn't been caused by nurses. In fact, what sort of a state would it be in if we didn't have those nurses working the additional unpaid hours they do, working every hour they can get in their day? And what are we doing with those people? We're paying them the lowest possible wage we can. In fact, international evidence brought out by the OECD last week shows, and this is despicable, that UK nurses are paid the lowest in Europe. Now, what way is that to run a country? What way is that to reward those people, those nurses that kept us going during the pandemic?
What do you say, though, to politicians and maybe some of our viewers this morning who also think we would love nurses to have very significant pay increases, but the country is hard up? There isn't the cash. What do you say to that?
I would say that nurses aren't greedy people. They definitely are not. But a nurse on £27,000 a year living in central London needs to be able to feed her children, be able to send them to school, look after them in creches so they can go to their work and pay their travel to go to work and also pay their utility bills. And they're not asking for an incredible pay rise. They're asking just to be able to make ends meet. That's what I would say to them. And if we want to retain our nurses in the system that we've got to do the things that Stephen talked about there now, we're going to have to do something.
Can sometimes talk you into something even worse.
Yes.
I just want to look at show people the Sunday Times this morning have described this period of industrial action as a new lockdown. Essentially, the country's going to be brought to a standstill, they claim. Pat, are you concerned about how the public might react to a prolonged period of strikes in all sorts of sectors? I think all the polling suggests, anecdotally, it seems to be the case, there's a lot of sympathy for nurses. But we are in a period where almost everywhere you look, there's industrial action on the way. Are you concerned about keeping the public on side?
Well, I would never take the public for granted. That's the first thing. And nurses don't take the public for granted. But I'm concerned for the public. I'm concerned for the public that can't get decent services, the services that they're entitled to. That's where my concern is. And what's the nurses' strike about? It's not about lining their pockets with gold. It's about standing up for their patients, wanting their patients to get a decent service, and filling the 50,000 vacant posts that we've got in the health service so that we can tackle those waiting lists, get those 2 million people seen in the right time and in the time that they deserve, so that they can then get back to contribute to the economy and society. That's what my concern's about. But I'll never take the public for granted, certainly as a nurse, and we won't throughout this strike either.
It's a very hard-working panel. Pat Cullen, you threw down the gauntlet to the government at the beginning of the programme. You then heard the Foreign Secretary's response to that. What's your response to him?
I did, and you know, if I had closed my eyes, I would have thought I was at a game of pass the parcel, because it's not me, Gov. I'm not responsible. It's somebody else. The bottom line is the government sets out the independent pay review body guidelines. It sets out the parameters in which they must operate, and those letters are a matter of record. You can read them. The one from Sajid Javid and the one this time from the current Health Secretary. So it has to be somebody's responsibility. It is the Health Secretary's responsibility to negotiate pay with me, or else through a conciliation through ACAS.
But listening to Wes Streeting, Pat, did you hear anything very different?
No, I didn't. I heard lots of promises about reform of the health service if they got in. The health service is constantly being reformed. Report after report after report. And why are those reports never implemented? Because we haven't the staff to implement them. Because we've 50,000 vacant nursing posts, we've over 100,000 vacancies. So it doesn't matter who comes into government and who provides another report. It will not happen if we don't retain our nursing staff.
Well, one of the